Welcome to the Signal, Edition 7, for June 9th, 2026. Today's thesis, Mind the Seam. Yesterday, Apple stopped pretending it would win the model race, and in doing so it showed us where the real contest has moved. When intelligence becomes cheap and ambient, the value and the danger migrate to the seams, the boundaries where data and authority cross from one trust domain into another. At WWDC 2026, Apple rebuilt Siri on a roughly 1.2 trillion parameter Google Gemini model under a multi-year deal reported at about $1 billion a year. But the interesting part is not which model Siri uses. It is the plumbing. Every query now crosses three trust domains: on device, Apple's private cloud compute, and Gemini running on NVIDIA B200 chips inside Google Cloud. At each boundary, Apple anonymizes, delinks, and tokenizes the request, and Google is contractually barred from training on the stream. Apple did not ship a model. It shipped a governed handoff. Once you see that pattern, you see it everywhere. The endpoints are commoditizing. In the middle, the seam, is where leverage and margin and risk now concentrate. Consumer I, device, private cloud, third-party model, data, object store, catalog, query engine, security, human, agent, service account, capital, booking, backlog, recognized revenue. In every row, the defensible position is the governed boundary in the middle. Walk that logic into data engineering and you arrive at the catalog. Apache Iceberg has effectively won the table format argument. Snowflake, Databricks, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft all read and write it. But when the format is settled, the contest moves to the seam between storage and compute, the rest catalog that decides who can read which table, how schemas evolve, and where encryption lies. That is why practitioners now describe a catalog war, and why the catalog, not the storage format, is where control consolidates. The security data tells the same story. The Cloud Security Alliance finds that about 92% of security professionals are concerned about AI agents, even as roughly 64% have already deployed them in live environments. But only about a quarter say they can actually enforce their strategy. That gap lies at a specific seam, the boundary between the accountable human, the agent acting for them, and the service account the agent borrows. Machine identities now outnumber humans by about 100 to 1. An agent is a new identity at a new seam, and if you cannot scope and revoke it there, you have deployed in a managed privileged user. Even the Cloud Capital story is a seam story, and Oracle is the case in point as it heads into its June 10th earnings. Oracle closed its most recent quarter with remaining performance obligations of roughly $553 billion, up about 325% year over year, with cloud infrastructure revenue growing around 84%. Those are staggering bookings, but a booking is a promise. The number that matters sits one seam downstream, how much of that backlog converts into recognized revenue, against a capital plan near $50 billion this year. Here is the question I cannot stop turning over. When a query leaves Apple's trust domain and enters Google's, whose data governance rules govern the crossing? Apple's answer is a private arrangement, an anonymizing proxy plus a no-train clause. The public rule because not caught up. The EUI Act's obligations for general-purpose models arrive on August 2nd, under 2 months out. Colorado has already gutted and replaced its I Act before it took effect. So the most consequential governance development this week was not a statute. It was a product architecture quietly asserting how cross-vendor data handling should work in the absence of a regulator saying how it must. So, what would I do Monday morning? 4 things. First, treat every trust domain crossing in your architecture as a named, own interface, with its own controls, logging in tests, not an implementation detail. Second, make your data catalog a first-class governance product, because whoever controls the catalog controls the lakehouse. Third, give every agent a real, scoped, revocable identity before you give it a task. And fourth, when you evaluate a partner's privacy or capability claim, ask to see how the seam is enforced, not how it is described. The model wars are winding down. The seam wars are just beginning, and they will be won by whoever makes the boundary between trust domains both useful and trustworthy. Own and govern your seams. This has been The Signal, Edition 7, June 9th, 2026. I'm Matt Suhil Mattis. I'll see you tomorrow.